Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first session of our AI series. Artificial intelligence continues to reshape the business landscape, and the integration of AI into daily operations has become more critical than ever. Global AI adoption is projected to reach 378 million users this year, with 83% of companies prioritizing AI in their strategies, and 92% of Fortune 100 companies have adopted ChatGPT, a leading generative AI tool with more than 400 million active weekly users worldwide, underscoring its significance in the corporate landscape. Leading this three-part series is John Munsell. He's the founder of Bizzuka and a leading authority on helping organizations adopt and scale AI. He has spent over 8,000 hours hands-on with tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity, so he knows what works and what doesn't. John has developed influential frameworks such as the AI Strategy Canvas, Scalable Prompt Engineering, and the Ingrained AI Roadmap. These tools are designed to help organizations implement AI consistently, securely, and at scale. John is also the author of Ingrained AI Strategy Through Execution, and his methods are now taught at LSU's, Louisiana State University, and used by professionals in business, government, and education. In this kickoff session, John will give you a simple breakdown of the top generative AI tools and when to use each. You'll leave knowing which AI tool to use for tasks like content creation, research, emails, and brainstorming, so you can work smarter and not harder. Thanks for your attention and for joining us today, and welcome to the Printerverse, John Munsell.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate it. Let me share my screen. I want to walk you through some of this stuff, and we'll hopefully get through it. It's a lot of information, but what my goal is to make it simple and understandable. And I know that a lot of you guys have used AI before, because I've spoken with a number of you, but just out of curiosity, well, the first thing I want to do is advance my screen. I want to talk about what we're going to do today. So this isn't going to be a really deep tech dive. I'm not going to go run through a bunch of complicated prompts and all that stuff. I'm not going to do a feature dump or anything like that. What I'm really going to be talking about is what's this thing, in real life. I mean, how do you use it from a business perspective? Because I'm not into parlor tricks. I'm really into how do we use it as business people? And I'm going to try to boil it down in what I would just call plain language. So here's the question I have for you. How many of you are using these tools? And if you could tell me in the chat, which ones do you use the most? Lots of chat GPTs so far, the winners. None. We have a none. Linda. Okay. Chat and Claude. A couple of nuns. All right. We got a Gemini popping up. Perplexity and Copilot. Okay. All right. Interesting. So pretty much everybody knows about ChatGPT. I do kind of find it interesting that I haven't seen anybody say Claude or Grok yet. There are several Claudes out there. Several say Copilot. And are you talking about the Copilot that's built into Microsoft products? Or are you talking about the Copilot that Gemini operates inside of its workspace environment? Yeah, the Microsoft Copilot. Yeah. So, okay, good stuff. Good to know. There were a few people that said they don't use it at all. So what I'm going to try not to do is talk over anybody's head. So if you do get stuck or anything, just holler. I'll try to repeat myself in a better way. All right, so here's the thing that I keep hearing over and over again: people just screaming about, man, you got to use AI and it's so important, blah blah blah. But nobody really shows you what to use and how to use it. And so that's what I'm going to try to do with this webinar series, is just kind of boil it down so you see what it's for. The thing that frustrates me is that and I see this in LinkedIn a lot, is that people know it as a marketing tool initially, right? Because marketing departments everywhere adopted it first because it could write copy faster. And a lot of people are thinking that this is going to just take away our ability to communicate as humans. And I think that's really short-sighted. And I think just using it as a copywriter is kind of like using your iPhone as a telephone. There's a whole lot more behind the scenes. So that's what we want to kind of boil into. And so the bottom line is the right tool matters. So if you use the right tool, you get better output. If you use it strategically, now you're actually optimizing your workflows and you're amplifying productivity. Now, on the flip side of it, you use the wrong tool, you're kind of wasting time and you might even generate some mistakes. And each tool is going to be built for different jobs, even though they all try to be all things to all people. The reality is there are strengths in some and weaknesses in some as well. So we're going to try to boil that down into these five. Okay. So everybody knows about ChatGPT. Fewer people are using Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, Grok, which is why Grok's in last place, because not a whole lot of people use that. Another show of hands, you can just throw a one in the box, is how many of you are building either custom GPTs or gems or projects or spaces or workspaces in any of these tools? They're basically the same thing. How many of you are actually building it? Just throw ones in there. Okay, handful. Mike's using GPT daily. Perfect. Okay, so there's a lot of you that haven't gone that far, it looks like. So this is where the real power is in the tool. And this is, at least from a business perspective, this is really where you get better results. So let's take a look at a quick tool comparison. From my perspective, and this changes weekly as these models continuously improve and they add new capabilities. But currently, I like ChatGPT for simplifying daily tasks, and I use custom GPTs all day long. The reason I like ChatGPT is because you can thread these custom GPTs together. So I can hire essentially experts. One might be for proposal writing, one might be for analyzing a transcript, and one might be for generating email replies. They all have unique expertise. And in each GPT, they all have unique documentation in their knowledge base. So bottom line is that I think you need to use the paid versions. The free versions are great to test drive, but they're not really going to get you where you need to go at scale. And they're all pretty much zeroing in on the $20 a month club. Some have more expensive ones. I know ChatGPT has a $200 a month club. Gemini's got an expensive one. Claude does. We use the team versions of ChatGPT and Claude. We're not using a team-based version of Gemini because we all have different Google accounts and we all share documents in theirs. But the team versions are great and irritating at the same time, but we can go into that later. But bottom line is, when you're able to thread together multiple GPTs, you'll see your productivity increase quite a bit. I like Gemini for long form analysis. It does some really good stuff with research. I'll ask it to research something, and it will literally come back with a 50-page document that with one click I can throw into a Google Doc, and then I can download it as a Word doc and I can distribute it. The other thing I like about that is I can take that document and it can become a knowledge-based document. So it's really good for that kind of stuff. Claude, everybody knows it is a really good copywriter. It's a little bit more creative. It needs a little less guidance, if you will. So I like it for that. It's got a decent sized context window. Sometimes it can kind of overthink things. It's actually pretty good at coding too, if you've ever used it for coding. Perplexity is neat if you just need to do some cited research and you want to look up some things. The other tools are doing this pretty well now too. So my use of Perplexity has gone down dramatically since they introduced deep research into some of these other tools. But I still like it to just do some rapid stuff. It'll find the answers a whole lot faster than some of the other ones. And then Grok, I like for really rapid research. Now, when I mean rapid, I mean that if I do a deep research inside of ChatGPT, it could take literally an hour. If I do it in Gemini, it might take 12 minutes if I'm asking it to dig up some pretty interesting things. Claude, I haven't really dug too deeply into its deep research yet to time it out, but it's generally in the same range as the others. Perplexity is pretty fast, but it uses DeepSeek, which is a Chinese product, and it's really cool. Grok is just fast. Grok will do research. You know, like if you just need something really quick and you need it in a minute and a half, Grok will do it. Gemini could take 12 minutes, and like I said, you can really spend some time in the others. So, Deborah,
Yes, I have two questions for you, please.
talk to me.
First of all, for strengths, can you dive a little into accuracy with these tools, especially with Grok, because where it's getting information from? And
Mhm.
also, what do you mean with Claude? What do you mean ethical AI focus, please?
Yeah, I'm going to go a deep dive into all of them.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll start with ChatGPT since that's the mothership, apparently. Um, so in ChatGPT, I love it for ideation. So if we, again, if we just sat copywriting on the side for a second, I've created GPTs that have a lot of information about our products and services and our company and our culture. They even have my book in them. And I'll just have it brainstorm with me. I have a GPT that has a prompt that basically, and I actually outlined this entire prompt in my book, by the way, but I'll have it brainstorm with me. I'll have it challenge my ideas and assumptions. I'll have it give me a counter opinion, and I'll have it actually be the persona that I'm targeting and role play with it. So it's really good for things like that. And for business type writing, it's really good for that as well. I like it for analyzing content. It does a really nice job there. Like for instance, I have a legal GPT and it'll analyze legal documents really well. And then if you're looking at the strengths, I just really like the custom GPTs. I think they do a good job there. The weaknesses that I don't really have on this screen for the GPT is I don't like the fact that you can't see the name of the file and get a preview. In Claude, you can in a custom GPT. I don't like that. But it's a fairly intuitive interface for where these things are right now. Most of them operate the same way. And so you're kind of stuck in this chat motif, so to speak. It's got some good creative writing capabilities in 4.5. So if you look down here, there's a bunch of models that you can choose from, but 4.5 does a much better job writing than 4.0, believe it or not. It's not as trite. It doesn't do those, I hope this email finds you well kind of thing, right? So it's really good in that area. It could hallucinate without you giving it facts. I have noticed in custom GPTs lately, it is hallucinating like a big dog. And I don't know why that is. I don't know whether it's just the time of day or what, but I've had to go, where are you getting this information? Because none of it exists in the knowledge base and you're just completely making it up. And I wish I could tell you that I've ironed it out, but I haven't. A couple hours later, it's not having a problem. A couple days later, it's back to having the problem. Sometimes I can get around with it by just telling you or telling it, hey, this isn't correct. This is what you should be doing. And it'll give me a better response. But it, this is why I use multiple LLMs, because when it starts to hallucinate, I don't have time to go back and forth with it and find out why it's making stuff up. I'm just going to go to another tool. Deborah, you had a question?
Yes, and I'm glad somebody asked it in the chat because we're a little lost. So if you can tell everybody what a GPT is.
Uh-huh.
Let's start there. Then
Gotcha.
what you mean by custom GPT. And
Mm-hmm.
now you just introduced LLM, which is also a question in there. So if we
Uh-huh.
can just make sure that
Thanks.
we're, yeah, let's just stop and level set for
We'll back
everybody
up a
before we,
notch.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Sure. So an LLM is a large language model. All of these things, whoops, if I can go back a notch, every one of these is a large language model, and Perplexity will call in some of these others as well. So that's what an LLM is. So just think of it that way. A custom GPT, let's take a look at these. All of these over here in ChatGPT are what I would call custom GPTs. That's what they were originally called. You can also create projects. Now, both of these have knowledge based documents. All right. The difference between a project and a GPT is that the GPT has custom instructions on top of it. And hang on a second, I'll show you what I mean by that. Like if I were to go into here, this is one that we have for our business plan, and then we've got one for sales information, and then I've got one for analyzing prospects. All right, so let's take a look at this. Everybody here has probably been involved in sales in one point or another. So this particular tool analyzes a prospect to see if they're really a good fit for us and gives us some briefing before we get on a call with somebody so I can see, do they have a problem that I potentially can solve, and what else can it dig up on them? So if I edit the GPT, you'll see over here, it's got, the name of the GPT, a little description that just sits there so everybody knows what it is. And then it's got a prompt. And this is the instructions that tells this GPT what it is. All right. This is an expert at analyzing stuff. It gives me the role, a whole lot of other instructions. So it's just a big custom prompt behind it. And then these are all of the knowledge based documents that are uploaded and contained in this GPT. Okay. So when I ask it questions, what I'm telling it to do first is look at these documents first and not go out into the ether and its own knowledge and answer a question. I want it controlled and I want it to really look at what we do. And so if I'm analyzing a prospect, it's going to know everything about our skills builder series, our training programs, our target audience, our pricing structure, everything in there, right? Even the book. All right. So it knows everything that we do at a really granular level. And so that's what makes it so powerful. So if I were to just go in here and, if we were to just pick out anybody, let me see if we can go find just some random search here. Should we use this? Dare we? All right. Let's use Deborah, for instance. All right. Let's see. And let me go back to where we're at the thing here. And I'll say, and then we'll paste in the URL. All right, so it's already got a prompt behind it that says, what am I going to do with all this? All right, and so now it's going to first analyze the web, and you can kind of see. And because of the way the model works, it's looking for more information about Deborah. Yeah, we're going to have a hard time getting through all this, but we're going to try. But anyway, so now what I then do is it gives me that, and I just say, yeah, I'm good with that. And it's going to go to the next step in this GPT. And the next step is going to give me a sales briefing, what they do, the audience, and then I'll go, yeah, that matches what I'm talking about. All right, so you get the idea. This is a custom, almost a custom application, but it's very, very unique to us and our business and our processes and everything. All right. And you can see that here it's actually pulling out stuff that would only make sense to us. It's not going to make sense if you're trying to, I don't know, sell copiers, right? And so now it's recommending products and services and a workshop and tools and blah blah blah. So you can see where it's going, and this will go through multiple steps. So I don't want to go through it, but in each of these tools, they have their version of a custom GPT. In Claude or in Gemini, it's called a gem, and they sit over here, and you do the same thing. You upload documents to it. In Claude, it's called a project, and you do the same thing. You would upload documents into it. In Grok, it's down here. It's called a workspace. And in Perplexity, it's over here and it's called a space. So you build those things in there, and they're really handy to control the response and get a much more specific output. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. Now, in each one, you've got all these models, and this is where it gets really complicated. You got to go figure out which one is best for which. I really like 4.5 for writing. If I'm doing some research and I need reasoning, I'm going to use their reasoning model. There's a difference, and think of it this way: with a traditional back and forth, if you will, with what we just described here, where we're asking a question, getting a response, asking a question, getting a response. That's your standard model that everybody has. When you get into the reasoning model, you're basically asking for it to achieve a goal, and then it's going through its own logic, and you can literally watch it make those decisions, and it'll go, they asked me for this, I wonder if blah, and it'll start doing some research, and then it'll go, okay, that's not what they're looking for, and then it will adjust its own course, and it'll go back and forth, adjusting its own course in real time, and it's fascinating to watch. It's good for a lot more than just writing copy. And those GPTs are really, really helpful. But when you get into the reasoning things, if you haven't played around with it yet, I highly recommend that you advance your subscription and do it. It's amazing. Claude has a larger context window, which is getting smaller, not literally, but because I'm using it for Claude projects and uploading a lot of information, they only let you work with that amount. Okay, so for instance, in one of these, if I go into Claude and I go into a project, okay, say this is a project. So this one was one that I used to kind of analyze the book and constantly improve it chapter by chapter, getting some, I basically had this act as an editor. You can see all the different documents that I had in here. But you can see 85% of the project knowledge base is used, which means I can only ask a couple of questions, and then it says, like, that's all the room I've got. I can't do this anymore. And it throws you in what we call Claude jail, and you can't use it for another hour or two or whatever. ChatGPT has the same thing inside of their research model, and it's a bigger jail sentence. I had one that was 3 weeks out. So just be aware of that. There's a certain amount of context that you can work within, and that all that means is how much data can you upload or how much can it consume in one conversation session before it just says, okay, it's either going to start forgetting stuff that was at the top of your screen, and that's it, and that's where you get into this stuff where it starts to get off the rails. So just be aware of that. That's one of the big advantages of Gemini, by the way. So we'll get to that in a second. But Claude, I think, sometimes can be overly cautious with its content, right? So they put a lot of guidelines on Claude. Sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. You can ask it a question, and if it thinks it's off limits, then it's going to go, I can't answer that. I wish I could remember the exact example that I had not too long ago, but it was almost comical because what I had asked it to do really had nothing to do with I forgot. I don't even remember, but it just said, I don't feel comfortable answering that. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I went into the other models and they're like, yeah, but there was a word or something in there that it thought, oh, and and what all I did was I like, hey, you must be misunderstanding me. This is what I meant. And then it went, oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. But it was really strange that it would do that. It was just a matter of phraseology, I guess. So they have a couple of models in here. This is their reasoning model. You turn on research on theirs. Sonnet is their latest model. It does a really nice job. I'm really impressed with it, and I like it for coding. It does some decent things for coding, and I know a lot of you don't do a lot of coding probably, but think of this. I wanted to. I'm working with some universities and some schools about implementing AI inside of their staff and faculty. And the question is there an ROI on them going through this training? And so I just asked ChatGPT, hey, if we're going to put, faculty and staff through training, what would you need to calculate an ROI? What would be the different variables you would put in there? And it just lists all of this stuff that I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And so then I asked ChatGPT to create a calculator, and it created one, but it was ugly. It was just straight up black and white. I took the exact same prompt and I put it in Claude, and it created an ROI calculator that was really attractive. And what I made sure that I told it, look, I need this to be in CSS and JavaScript so I can pop it into an existing WordPress page. And it did it, and it did well. So it did a nice job until it didn't do a nice job. And then once it got, I was like, hey, can you change the mouse over to do this and change the button to say that? And next thing you know, after about 3 corrections, it started to get screwed up because it created a fairly complicated um, calculator out, but it was cool looking. So I had to take that same calculator and I had to put it uh, where the heck did Gemini go? There's Gemini. I had to put it in Gemini, and Gemini cleaned it up like that. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. So I really am getting more and more impressed with Gemini. The latest model is 2.5 Pro. Highly, highly recommend it. It is very good. 2.5 Flash is going to be faster. But this thing is really, really impressive. It has really good interface with, if you're a Google Workspace user, it's got really good connections there. The thing I like about it is its ability to do really nice data analysis. And you can do it, kind of like you were talking about Copilot earlier. I can take a Google Sheet and I can create a formula that calls AI and works some magic on the cells next to it. So I really like that Copilot earlier. I can take a Google Sheet and I can create a formula that calls AI and works some magic on the cells next to it. So I really like that. I like the way it's really integrated tightly with the Google Workspace. Really good stuff. I was really impressed with the context window. It's literally 10 times greater than Claude's. It's just massive. So, whereas me uploading my book into one of those Claude projects pretty well taps it every time, I can load up 8 of my books in here and it won't have a problem with it. Um, Prompt conflict, on the other hand, can be a little difficult to resolve. Now, what do I mean by prompt conflict? If you don't structure your prompts right and you do just full on paragraph prompts, you'll find that there are words in your prompt that will trigger a response that you don't necessarily want. And so, what we try to teach people is how to structure a prompt so that you eliminate a lot of that prompt conflict. What do I mean by that? Like, I've told this example before, but we had someone go through our training who built a chatbot, and that chatbot was an internal chatbot for people to learn how to sell ophthalmology services inside of an ophthalmology clinic. And she came to our office hours one day and she said, "John, I need help. I can't get my chatbot to stop talking like a pirate." And I was like, "Whoa, so let me take a look." And sure enough, she had, for her style of voice and what she'd asked the GPT to do, she just had a bunch of words. And one of those was like, okay, you're a helpful assistant, and your job is to role play and help these people understand our products and services. And then it says, I want you to use a little bit of humor, kind of like that crazy uncle. Well, crazy uncle, role play, humor, all that combined somehow made it talk like a pirate. Now, if she had structured it right, we wouldn't have had that prompt conflict. And that's what I mean. The words were competing with one another. So we restructured the prompt and we got rid of it. It's a little bit trickier with Gemini to find it because Gemini uses a lot of words to make its own assumptions as to what you're looking for. Like if you're telling it to write a research paper, it will think, okay, it's a research paper, so I'm going to need to use a certain tone of voice. And to try to prompt it out of the voice that it already wants to have is a little tricky. Perplexity. How many of you guys have used Perplexity? Anybody? It's got a free version. It's man, most people were using it to replace Google for quite a while. Yeah, a lot of people using it. I see that. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Um, I'm using it less these days, like I said earlier, but I like it when I want to get really fast results. I also like it if I want to, going off business and back into parlor trick mode. I needed to fix something on a dishwasher, and I just went to Perplexity and I go like, here's the model I got. Show me how do I replace this particular um, tool on it, this particular electronics. And it gave me a whole lot of videos really quickly. And that was like, great. It gave me exactly what I needed as quickly as possible. On the other end, I had to take a picture of the top part of the dishwasher where the control panel is and throw that in ChatGPT and say, what is this? And so it at least found it. So that's why I say I like going back and forth with each. The good news is I got it replaced. But anyway, it's got a bunch of models that you can choose from too. It's got its own models. So it's got a pretty fast little thing for doing its research. And then you can also pull in Claude if you wanted to. So you could pull in Claude, run your research in Perplexity, and use Claude to write your copy right inside of Perplexity. It'll do that, which is pretty cool. It'll also pull in GPT 4.1, Gemini 2.5. Grok is also now incorporated in it, and this is Deep Seeks. So anyway, you can pull a bunch of different models down inside of that. You don't have that capability in any other tool other than this one. On the weak side of it, I have had it hallucinate in a crazy way when I told it to go research a URL and give me some stuff back on it. And it don't know why, it just made everything up on that URL. And I don't know whether it was the structure of the prompt. I always test the identical prompt across all five of these tools to see which one responds which way. And I did notice that on several occasions, Perplexity would just completely make something up. On the other end, when there's a footnote, where it has a notation, it's pretty good. You just click that notation, and you can see what's out there. So it's a good, solid tool for really fast research and getting source material for anything that you're going to be doing out there. Grok is an up and comer, and I kind of have been fascinated with Grok, the way it works in research. But I've also noticed some interesting things about it that failed in all of the other ones. I uploaded a list of 400 some odd transactions, and these I was filling out an expense report, and I was 7 months behind. So I had quite a few items on there. So all I uploaded was the date, the name of the vendor, and the dollar amount. It was an export out of Quicken. And what I wanted it to do was categorize them according to our general ledger. All right. So I used all four tools. I didn't use Perplexity for this. I used the other four. So I uploaded the list in a spreadsheet, and I uploaded the GL accounts in a different spreadsheet. And I told it I wanted it to analyze these expenses and categorize them in the appropriate GL account. That's a pretty complicated ask, right? But I didn't have a whole lot of time to do it, and I just wanted to see how well it would do it. And Grok was the only one that nailed it. The rest were so far off, it wasn't even funny. Grok got everything. So I was really impressed with how it could analyze data and find relationships in that data. So very cool tool. I'm a fan. It's got a couple of weaknesses. It's tied a lot to the X or Twitter ecosystem. So that might have some sway in the information that it brings back. On the other end, if you're looking for like real-time trending information, it's a pretty good tool to grab stuff because is nonstop, and you'll read about stuff happening like earthquakes faster on Twitter than you will anywhere else. So it's got its pros and its cons like everybody else. It's just about knowing what to use and when. So that kind of brings me to this. What is it you're trying to do? And for me, like I said, for day-to-day tasks where I'm going in and out of these kinds of things, and that's the other thing, like I'm in the middle of this one, I can use a little @ symbol here, and let's see if it'll of course it won't, it'll fail on me now while I'm in here, but I can literally pull in any number of, I'll start with a new one, and I'll pull down here. Once you hit @ you'll see it starts searching, and what it's searching for is your own GPTs. So I could look for let's try it again. I'm going to go for, Bizzuka Prospect Analyst. I can call that in here. I can ask it a question, and then I can call in a different one, and I can, inside of the same context pane, I can go in and out of different GPTs, which is really helpful because one of our models, I'll show you here in a second, what we do when we're doing things is we're going to go from, actually, I don't think I have that on here. I'll just describe it for you. When I finish one of these meetings, and there are a lot of note takers in here, when I finish a meeting with a prospect or a client or whatever, I'm going to take the transcript from the note taker and I'm going to pull it into our transcript analyzer GPT. And then if it's a sales call, then I'm going to, in that same context window, and after it's analyzed the transcript, I'm going to pull in the proposal generator. I'm going to generate a proposal. And then in that same transcript analyzer, I've got several other ones that I loop through where I'm going to try to analyze the individual on the call so I understand what's important to them. and I create a persona around that. And then I have another GPT that becomes that persona and then reads my proposal and makes sure I answer everything that would have been important to that person. So I do that by looping them back and forth inside of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, it's no wonder that everybody said they used it a lot, because man, I live in this one most of the time, but it is starting to shift. For quick resources, I like Perplexity. Marketing copy, I'm still a fan of Claude. Um, Deep research, I got to go with Gemini. I just like it a lot. Fast research, then it's going to be Grok. And then here's the thing, when you're able to go from tool to tool, you can do your research in Gemini, and then you can pull all that data into ChatGPT, and you can make it into a custom GPT knowledge-based document, and then you can start working and querying against that. You can do the same thing, by the way, in Gemini, but sometimes it pays to get a second opinion. So we run it over there. And then if you were to do some output, like you're trying to write something, you can go polish that over in Claude if you wanted to. There are tools, by the way, that will allow you to do this in one fell swoop. You can just bounce in and out of them. I'm just showing you, look, if you don't have all those tools, you can do it yourself. And it's really easy. And man, it's a game changer. The thing you don't want to do is just stick with one tool, because again, they'll make mistakes, they'll go down, they'll lock you out, whatever it is. If you're using it in your day to day, man, it makes a whole lot of sense to have a backup, or three in my case. And then the other mistake is just copying prompts and not, from these guys that go, oh, this prompt is going to change your life, and you copy it, and it doesn't do anything because you realize you've left out a lot of context, which is what we're going to go into, by the way, in the next session, how to make sure you've got the appropriate context in your prompts. And then, of course, expecting one tool to do everything, because that's everybody's goal, is to get it to do everything. But you'll find that the more they try to do everything, the more it's really kind of hard to play around. Um, I will say though, again, Gemini is starting to become my favorite, because you're at least you're going to a different operation inside of ChatGPT. You're staying in the same one, and in certain areas, it's very slow, especially on the research side. So for me, I think the main thing you want to do is just kind of look at your own workflow and your own usage patterns, and figure out, where do you need backup? Where do you need assistance? Where could AI really help you the most? All right, so we kind of looked at it a little bit. I want to kind of speed up a little bit, just in case we need to cover some other things. But this is kind of my cheat sheet when I started to produce this. I have changed it. So I'll also give you all a copy of this slide deck, so you don't have to take screenshots if you don't want to. But, again, I was liking Perplexity for problem solving, and Gemini for rich analysis, and copywriting for Claude, and ChatGPT for all those threaded GPTs, and for quick answers, it was Grok. I have since kind of updated that. And again, man, if I just need something fast, and there are plenty of times where I just want a quick answer, I don't need a whole lot of detail, just give me something fast. I like Grok for that. Day to day, you've heard me say this, but ChatGPT can be slow on the deep research, but on the day to day, going in and out of custom GPTs, there's nothing more powerful than that. And we'll go deeper into custom GPTs in the third and final session, just so you know. Gemini, on the other end, is better. So these two are really good at deep research, and for that matter, so is Perplexity when you turn on the deep seek. But I still got to go with these two. I think these are amazing tools. Gemini, I've just blown away by the depth of what it'll pull back, and how well you can use that. And then for copywriting, Claude still is my favorite when it comes to copywriting. Needs a little less guidance, but Gemini if you have the right calibration, and you'll see how we calibrate prompts, but on the next week. But if you calibrate it right, it'll hold that calibration really well. So I'm starting to like Gemini a lot for copywriting. And if I could squeeze in a third one, it's going to be ChatGPT 4.5. They're all kind of neck and neck these days. It's really interesting. And again, for quick stuff, it's still Grok. Those are my main ones that I'm a big fan of. So as Deborah said, if you have questions, and she was the marshal of all questions, we're going to record our own, I guess, baby podcast where we'll just go through the questions and all that stuff, and Deborah will distribute that to you. And bottom line is this is what's coming up next week, where we're going to talk about how do you get better results every time when you're using it. And some of you people who aren't using it, man, you need to get out there and play around with it, and just think of it more as an assistant, not an opponent, not a fast copywriter. It's way more than that. The stuff that it will help you do in your business, I just can't tell you how powerful it is in our business. I can knock out stuff in a couple of hours that would have normally taken me 2-3 weeks. I mean, just the research alone, like I banged out a really in-depth research on our total addressable market, our potential to attract that market, from a global perspective to a national perspective. The detail was insane. It would have taken either a large consulting group, $50,000 to pair this report, or it would have taken me 4 to 5 weeks to go in depth this much. And Gemini did it in 8 minutes. It was just mind boggling. A 54-page document. I mean, just crazy. So anyway, it'll do a lot. Theoretically, this little link will get you to the registration for next week if you haven't already done it. Deborah, hopefully I did that. You can always throw it in the chat or something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
did. I threw the next two are in the chat already.
Okay, cool. And there we go. That's it. I haven't had a chance to read through the chat
I
messages.
do have some questions for you if
Yeah,
that's
let her
okay.
rip.
And
What
if
you got?
anybody needs to leave, go ahead. But I will send the replays. But if you can be here and you want to, ask a question now's the time. Now's the time. So first of all, John, thank you so much for all of that information. I didn't even know that ChatGPT could do half those things. And it really is a time saver because I do go back and basically I saw you present at a printing event and you gave everybody a roadmap of how to generate effective chat prompts. So I've
Mm-hmm.
been using your method since then, but I never saved it. I just keep retyping it and retyping it. So that is fantastic to know that you can recall, you can set parameters of things. There's a
Mm-hmm.
couple of questions. One is very topical. Any good image generation platforms? A lot of people have been
Oh
using
man, there's a bunch.
ChatGPT for that.
Mhm.
ChatGPT for that. There was these Barbie dolls and toys going around a couple of weeks ago. So, what
Yeah.
is your recommendation for that?
I wish I had one because that's another one where they go back and forth. I use one called Design. I think it's Dzine. Um, I like ChatGPT. Let me see if I can show you some stuff. I had it create this. All right. So this is the prompt, by the way. And I was trying to create a label for a barbecue sauce. I was just goofing around with it. And so this is right out of the gates what it created. And I thought that's pretty interesting. And I thought, well, I wonder what some of these other tools will do. And if I can find it, I can't recall whether I did it in all of them. Yeah, knowing me, I won't be able to find them now. I had them up. Here we go. All right, so this is the same prompt. Okay, so not good, right? But Claude is trying to do it out of HTML, creating an SVG based design. If I go over here into Grok, Grok created these versions. Did I go into Perplexity? Let's see. Yeah, there's that. That was horrible. I know I did it in Gemini. Question is where.
So you don't have a recommendation is what I'm
No,
getting
I
at.
mean, I've used a bunch of them. Yeah, so this is the one that Gemini created. So they all have a different take on just whatever you're trying to do. That's why I play around with them. So in here, let's see, Kling does a really cool stuff, and I,
Mid-Journey is a
yeah, Mid Journey. Everybody uses Mid Journey.
I
I
find that
like
one
that a
very
lot.
difficult though with the prompts in there. It's way more
Yeah, it's a little
difficult than
much. That's why I'm starting to shift away from it. I wish I could find where's
it's okay.
design.
Let's move on to another
Yeah,
question if that's okay with you.
no, that's
Um
fine.
so um one of the questions is about the documents that you put. I'm going to put two questions together. So
Hmm.
one of the questions is where you showed the example in ChatGPT where it had all the documentation that it was referring to give you a proposal for a person, based upon all your
Hmm.
parameters. The
Yeah,
question there is, how do you know what to stick in there? And it seemed like in a potentially long process to get to the point of it being highly effective. And the second part of that question is going to go to security because there's been a lot of discussion about, the fact that anything you upload to these systems now becomes a part of responses for
for
everything.
training. Yeah,
Right.
training the model.
And
Yeah.
they've been people have been told not to put anything proprietary up there, but
Hmm.
quite frankly, if it's on your site, the things can find it in some cases. So what are your responses to those two things, please?
Well, first of all, when you have a team version of ChatGPT, none of your stuff is used to train the model. So you're cool there. If you have a paid version, you have to know where to turn that off. And that button to turn it off inside of a custom GPT only appears when you upload a document. Okay. It won't even appear unless you upload a document as a knowledge based document in that GPT. So you have to know how to do that. You have to know where in Grok to turn that off, as it's in settings in Grok. Turn it off where you don't want it to train the model. That's the thing that I'm not a big fan of Gemini, because to turn it off in Gemini, you turn off your history, meaning you have a conversation, you're finished, bye bye conversation. All right. So basically, Google said, you put it in there, we're going to use it. All right. So you got to be comfortable with that. And I think there's a fuse they may give you on that where they'll delete it. But I was looking at their privacy policy. I was digging around trying to figure out, how do you tell it not to train the model? And it goes, oh, here's how you do it. You don't record your history. Oh, that's a big um, strike for me, right?
Yeah.
So the stuff that I typically put in there, um, I might, like, for instance, in Chat GPT and in Claude, I'll put pricing information in there. Just, it helps me, right? I'm not going to put that in Gemini because I don't want an entire pricing grid going out to my competition. Not that they would know how to access it, but you never know if it's used to train the model and somebody says, what's Bizzuka's pricing? They'll probably find it. So I try not to do that. Um, that's really the key. Read the privacy policy, figure out how to turn that off. And it's like I always say, If the product is free, you are the product. So just remember that. When
Yeah.
you pay for it, paying has privileges, and you want to figure out what those privileges are. Even with a paid version of Google's, um, I, I I couldn't turn it off without turning off my history.
Right. I notice a dramatic difference between the free chat GPT and the paid GPT. I mean,
Yeah.
the first one just being that you don't get put in timeout. I have overextended my deep research and they've been like, you got to wait like an hour till you can ask another thing. But other than that, it's been able to do everything that I asked it to do. Okay. And by the way, it's identified itself as a female and calls itself Xena on my computer. Just so you know, I'm having conversations with it as using the pronoun that it has asked me to use for it. However, I want to talk to you about Grok for 1 second because I'm very
Okay.
concerned here.
Okay.
There is just so much out there about Grok being programmed to supply specific answers to I'm just going to say hot button topic political things. It is being told and it is also being trained on the people who are now left on that platform.
Mhm.
So why are you citing it as a credible source of information? I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. All of them are being trained to answer questions in a specific manner. All of them. I've gone into all of them and I've asked a very generic question just to get a sense on how they would answer the question. And I was amazed at how many of them took a very clear political bend, a very clear political bend.
Hmm.
Every single one of them. Okay. So I don't know that I trust any of them, to be honest. I know that if you're going to be, triggered by something, then the, I don't know. I can't be bothered. My feeling
Okay.
is I grew up with a tough skin. I don't worry about it. I'm using it for a very specific purpose. I'm
Right.
not using it to um, if I feel like what it's giving me is in one direction or another, that's a different type of question I'm trying to get out of it. But if I'm trying to get market research about how many printers are in the U.S. that employ more than 5 people, um, I don't know how you can get politically incorrect with that answer, no matter which tool
But
you use,
how
right?
would Twitter have that information? I mean, that's what it is. It's
Well,
going
I
to
mean,
Twitter.
there's also a lot of misinformation going out there about what Grok actually is. Grok is an LLM that's been trained on a whole lot of content. It has a lot of information from Twitter, which is more opinion based, but
Correct.
everything else is more factual based, right? It's
Right.
going to have data sets, it's going to have everything else. So try not to conflate the two issues. It depends on what you're asking. If you're asking a question that's going to be jaded by an opinion, then be prepared no matter which tool you use. On the other end, if you're just trying to do research and you're trying to find, um, I don't know, data on something, that's a different animal. If you're trying to get it to use its knowledge to give you an instant um, analysis of information you provide it, you know, any model will do. But I don't really get caught up in the politics of all of that, you
It's
know?
not that it's politics, it's just incorrect information because it's
Well, I know, but I mean that's what I say. You just have to decide what you are trying to get
correct.
and
And
which tool to
yes.
use for that, right?
And to be totally fair, I'm sure you saw the other day the Washington Post published a book, summer book reading from real authors, but they were incorrect books. They never wrote those books. So
Where did they get
apparently
that from? Interesting.
They said it was ChatGPT. The Washington Post admitted to it, by the way.
Mm,
So I think that something that you said in the beginning is really important as we wrap this up, which is that these are tools. They are tools. They are
hmm.
efficiency tools. They can help you be creative, to help you spark ideas, to help you formulate thoughts around an idea, come up with comprehensive planning. But you cannot just look at a screen, copy and paste, and think that everything is going to be okay, especially with stats, facts, anything like that. Even when I ask these things to cite sources, I will go to those sources and
Yeah,
make
you have
sure
to.
that that information was not interpreted, but it was actually taken from what it was taken
Yeah.
from, because authenticity matters in all of this. Also, I would say that it's getting easier and easier for regular people to notice when something is written by a GPT or something like that. One of the things is that it has perfect punctuation. It's using those M dashes that regular humans don't really use. So if you are using it and submitting it to people, make sure you go in there and humanize that content, or someone like me is going to see right away that you're not really actually writing your blog posts or your social media posts or your emails, which is fine, by the way, except that we live in a world where one-to-one communication is super important. So you can automate certain things, but go in there and add humanness to it where you can, to help create connection with people. Any last advice before we sign off for today?
No, the only thing is, like I said before, just know what tool you're using and why you're using it. And like I said, when I used Grok to do that analysis, I was giving it two spreadsheets and it made the relationships and none others would. I, 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 I don't use it that often for anything else. I'm not, but I'm living primarily in Google's Gemini and ChatGPT, and that ratio used to be I lived in Claude and some ChatGPT, and it's migrating. So just be aware these things are progressing. They don't sleep. They get better and better, and you need to learn how to use them now so that you know which ones to use for what purpose. That's that's it.
As John and I both mentioned, we will do a follow up recording after the three webinars are done to go back and answer questions. If you have questions and you weren't able to put them in the chat, and maybe you're watching the replay, find me on LinkedIn or send me an email, Deborah at printmediacenter.com, or just go to the website. You can contact me from there, and I will create a list. Obviously, connect with John. Check out his book. John, there's a lot of people in the chat who have bought your book prior to now and are buying it as we speak. So
I appreciate
great
that.
job for everything. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, print long, prompt long, and prosper.
Prompt short.
Prompt short, correct.